Yes, this is the day that the Lord has made. We shall rejoice and be glad in it. It is another Wednesday night when we come to your home, right there where you are, through your television or through your computer, through your phone, or whatever gadget you are using. It is a medium or a mode of communication. And through that communication, I pray that God would speak to you. For when we come to Open Talk is founded on the Word of God. It's based on the Word of God, and the aim of Open Talk is to educate, to bring in information, to bring in correction, to bring in maybe a rebuke, and to challenge you, and to bring in some nuggets of wisdom from our guests. And our guests have been tremendous. We have talked on different topics, in different ways. But every time I realize that I get a lot of comments from the individual's story. The story of an individual is so real because it brings God into life. And I pray that tonight you are going to get some nuggets of wisdom that will help you move to the next level, because we have a very, very special guest. Our guest tonight is an alumni of Utumishi Boys Academy in Gilgil, and he's a businessman and an entrepreneur, and you have not a foreigner, but but resides in two nations. This is none other than Charles Kinuthia. Charles Kinuthia, would you want to say jambo to our viewers?
Jambo, thank you so much, Bishop, for having me.
Thank you so very much. Charles, I've known Charles Kinuthia since 19 long ago. 19 long ago is not yesterday. So he is a young man that I can vouch for. He's a young man that I have stood with many times, and I pray that whatever he says tonight from his story, you will capture something that will lift you up to the next level. Welcome to Open Talk, Charles.
Thank you so much.
As I said, you have heard me say Open Talk is based on the Word of God, and it's more on giving up your story. You give us your story so we can see what God has done in your life and where He is taking you, and much more to stir up other people to put their confidence in God so they can move forward. Now, maybe I'll start by asking you a question. Very simple question.
Yes.
Who is Charles Kinuthia? That means where were you born? Were your parents? Were you born alone and all that? Your family?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, Charles Kinuthia, actually, I was born in Nakuru at a place called Shabab. And that's where I grew up. And that's the only place that I really lived for the entire of my childhood. So I was born in a family of 5, and actually I like sharing this story, reminding people of never forget the humble beginnings where you come from. So we grew off less than $1 a day for a family of 5. My mom was a teacher and my father was a cab driver, later on to be a matatu driver. And yeah, that was a long time ago, and
long time ago.
Very long time ago, and so that's why I grew up for the most of my childhood. My parents, presently, they are back in Nakuru, as a matter of fact. So they came back. They had migrated for a period of time and they lived in the United States, but now they are back in Nakuru. For the rest of my siblings, I have one sister and one other brother, and they are presently still living in the United States. So growing up in Nakuru, I went to Baptist Nursery School. So that's where I went for my nursery classes. And then I went to Mamangina Primary School. And, you know, back then, you know, spent about 8 years in Mamangina Primary School. And I was fortunate enough that I ended up going to Utumishi Boys Academy, where I did my high school.
Wow.
And that's really my childhood up until that time. Yes.
Now, when you were growing up, did you ever go to church, or you went to the market, or you went to just to town and play around?
So I did a combination of both. I'm glad you asked that, actually. So I I was going to Baptist church for a period of time. Then when I moved over and I started going to Utumishi, I met another young man by the name of Nicky. And he eventually, I guess, recruited me, and I started going to Deliverance Church. So that's where I started going to church, at Deliverance Church. But I always had the entrepreneur's instinct, and I think that started from a very long time ago. So I remember when we were in primary school, about at the age of 7, one time I went to my parents and I was talking to them, and I said, you know, I needed some money to go to town. So back then you would take a matatu to take you to town, and it was only about 10 shillings. And I remember my mom telling me, I don't have money at this present moment. And I just kept wondering, you know, how can I solve this problem? So one day I literally went and grabbed all the newspapers in the house that were there, and I went and sold them to the butcheries. I didn't know what the price was. I would just say, hey, I have some newspapers up for sale, and so they would pay me some money. And I went to my mom and I said, here, I have some money and I have enough for me to go to town. And you know, at an early age, that's when my mother started seeing something was a little bit different with me. I just didn't allow my current situation to define me. So much so that I got to a point of even selling skuma wiki. So when you're talking about town, we had a little bustani at the back of the house where we lived, and my mom did some subsistence farming for us, for eating. But one day I just went and harvested everything, and I went outside the gate and I started selling, because I just thought, you know, why are we struggling? There's opportunities all around, right? So I did a little bit of both. I did church. I also did a little bit of business. Yeah.
So when you saw the sukuma wiki, what did your mom say?
First, she was kind of disappointed but happy at the same time. Disappointed in the sense that was the food we were supposed to be eating. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. But happy in the sense of I shared the little proceeds I got, and I'm like, we have some money, right? So, and I think that really taught me something at an early age, because while others constantly were looking at how poverty, or rather allowed poverty to define them, I kept on seeing opportunities around that, hey, you could sell this. You know, now, again, you know, it's a very interesting story, because later on, during my primary school, I couldn't go back home for lunch. So my mother would give me 30 shillings to go and eat from school at Mamangina Primary School, because she couldn't come home and prepare lunch and then go back to work. And I remember I started also at that early age, thought to myself, why eat 30 shillings? Because the food at school was 30 shillings. I thought to myself, I could actually save about 20, and then the 10 shillings, the 10 bob, I would go and buy chips. So there's a place we used to go and buy chips for 5 shillings. You add another 5 shillings, you get chips and sausage. So I would actually go buy chips and sausage, and then I saved 20. So I saved 20 for almost an entire year. And then I bought a small camera. And that camera, I started taking kids' photos at school, and then I would develop and then sell it to them. Until my camera was discovered, and my father was very disappointed at first, because he didn't understand where I got the money from. So, you know, we experimented. We tried business at a very early age.
So do you still have the camera, or was it...
So when my father found out about the camera, he disposed of it, because he wasn't sure what I was doing with the money, and he was a little bit suspicious. Of course, at an early age, I wasn't very upcoming. I wasn't very truthful about how I got the money. But because I was eating chips every day. By the way, it's interesting. I still like chips till today. But I guess it started back then. So I would save money, develop the photos, and I start making fun, you know, money from other students. So my early childhood was, you could say, a little binary. So there was the poverty that surrounded us, but then there was what can I do with this situation that I'm in and come out of it? And I think that is what really gave me the ambition. And I must say this in all truthfulness. When I started coming to Deliverance Church, I remember so often you constantly were talking about get your passports ready. I don't know if you remember that. And we had a thing at church that talked about get your passports ready. And it sounded so far-fetched because of the environment that I was living in. But something in me kept believing that something greater can come out of this. And so you would say that many, many times. And then we started hearing of other friends at church who had actually gone abroad. And, you know, that was such a motivation for me. And, you know, the time came and I started trying to find out how I could actually go abroad. Before then, I started a little cell phone business, and I would sell cell phones in town and things like that. And, you know, I was able to raise a little bit of money. And when I did, I actually started applying. I went to the cyber cafe. I started applying all kinds of schools, and one school in specific responded to me.
Before you go to that school, while in Koilel, not Koilel, Utumishi Academy.
Yes. Those were competitors.
Yes. While in Utumishi Academy, did you do any business there, or was it just pure learning?
I did a little bit business.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was actually selling biscuits.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'd get the biscuits for, you know, like for eating, for yourself. There was the...
Or from the school?
No. So you buy. That's like the extra stuff you've brought for yourself. So one box used to have about 300 biscuits, but it was going for 160 shillings. But I would sell the biscuits for 1 shilling each. So I'd make a little bit of money.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was selling biscuits.
Just one biscuit.
1 shilling.
One shilling.
So when people are taking their tea break, which was usually about 10 o'clock, they would come and buy. I didn't care for the tea, so I was in my room and I would be selling the biscuits for 1 shilling.
Wow.
Yeah. So make about 140 shillings profit.
Okay, that was good profit.
Yeah, about 80%. Yeah,
that was quite an adventure.
Yes.
Okay, so then now you are finished, or you are done with the Koile, with the
Utumishi.
Utumishi. What is Koile coming from? Okay, yes. I am an alumni of Koile. So
that's why.
So you are done with Utumishi.
Absolutely.
What happened? Where did you go from there?
So the story gets interesting, actually. So I finished Utumishi, and I didn't do very well to get accepted to the college that I had applied
because
for.
You were selling biscuits.
Because I was busy making money. I think that was the reason. So I didn't get the university here in Nairobi, that I was looking for. And so my mom tells my dad that at Deliverance Church there is a computer school. So they gave me the money and I paid, I think back then it was about 3,000 or 5,000 shillings to go and study computers. So what I did is I got the money, I came and paid, and I attended the classes. And literally after 1 week, I was just confused. I was like, I'm not understanding, I'm not following, the entrepreneurial instinct is kicking in me, I'm seated here and I'm frustrated with my life. So what I did was, I started going to town. So I would come for a few hours, then I would go to town. Then I started missing out, which was not the right thing to do, but I started missing out the classes because I was hanging around someone who was working for someone at a cell phone shop. And I was very curious because cell phones at that time was the new thing. You know, and they were selling Alcatels and Motorola's this big, and I would go and spend a lot of time with him. So he started training me on what he's doing, actually. So I would sit down and just observe him and things like that. And he showed me where they usually get the phones from and who they sell them to and things like that. After a short period of time, people started thinking that I also sell cell phones because they're always seeing me there. So I would meet people in town randomly and they say, hey, by the way, do you have this type of cell phone? And I would be like, yeah, I can get it for you. So one day, I'm walking in town and I meet a gentleman who had a couple of petrol stations and he wanted to buy cell phones and put them in his petrol stations and start selling. He said, I've seen you and I know you. Can you help me? I need to buy these cell phones. I pull him on the side and we go into a place and have coffee and I tell him, I can get them for you. What are you looking for? It was a big order. It was, I believe it was about 50 cell phones.
Wow.
I was going to make about 80,000 profit from the deal. And I told him, give me 50%. Once I deliver the phones, you pay me the balance. I went to the supplier and I told them, I'm going to give you 50%, which my margin is about 30% there. And I said, then I'm going to bring you the balance once I deliver them. So I did that transaction. And overnight, I had 80,000 Kenyan shillings in my pocket.
Wow.
I had never seen that kind of money before in my life. So I decided I can start my own cell phone shop. So I went to the stage and there was a chemist someplace in town. I went and talked to the doctor there and I said, hey, you have this big glass thing and the only thing you're displaying there is Spiritons and Panadol. I will pay you for this booth. Just allow me to put the cell phone there. Plus it's beneficial for you because more people are going to start coming in over there. At the time I had a friend also from Deliverance called Michael and I asked him to help me because even he was working at a cell phone shop at the time. So we set up there, started paying that doctor. That was my first cell phone shop. No stock, we only put dummies there. People would come, I'm looking for this cell phone. I'm like, that's a good phone, I can get it for you, just give us some deposit. And that's how the cell phone business started. Wow. Yeah. I actually called it Chege Mobile Connections, CMC. Wow. So that's what happened after my high school.
Okay, so is the business still there or did you abandon it or leave it with someone else?
So we abandoned it because of several reasons. So the first thing we actually, and these are business lessons as a matter of fact, we grew too fast, but we had very poor management.
Okay.
Okay, and so we first opened a shop in Nakuru, then we opened another shop in Naivasha, and then another shop in Gilgil. Oh. And so we had to start managing all those shops, put employees that were not trustworthy, didn't have any management experience at that particular time. And so while there was money to be made, we were actually mismanaging the resources that were coming in, started living a little bit lavish lifestyle, moved out from my parents' house, got a 3-bedroom house in section 58. I was living life, and so at some point we started losing money. So we closed 2 of the shops, Naivasha and Gilgil, and then eventually made some very poor decisions with a friend of mine that also got me into selling computers and things like that. And that's when I decided it's time for me to start looking for school and probably I need to get out of this place. That's how I thought to myself, maybe I need to get my passport ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
All this time you've been coming to church and seeing the sign, get your passport ready.
Absolutely.
But nothing has registered yet.
Nothing has registered yet.
Okay.
It's until we made some really poor decisions and I thought to myself, maybe I need a little bit more experience and I can do this. Yeah. So I shut everything down, left even my 3-bedroom house in section 58, moved back to my parents, and I really started looking for school. Interesting enough, the only school that responded to me, I was actually 2 schools that responded. One was in Switzerland, and I could not afford the school fees. And the other one was in Finland that said you could come and get free scholarship, but you have to come first and take an entrance exam. So I did everything. Actually, my parents didn't even know what was going on. I just came and told them, look, I've been accepted to go to school in Finland and I have all the documents. And it was a shock. They're like, how did you do this? I'm like, it's actually very soon. Like, I'm ready to leave within 2-3 weeks' time. I'm actually going to be leaving. And that's where the journey of starting to go actually came about.
Okay.
Yes.
This time you already have your passport?
This time I already have my passport. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And actually towards the last time, like you told the viewers, we've known each other for a long time. You are in the UK at the time, and you had just come back. And I remember coming and telling you that I'm going to Finland. And you had some pounds left in the pocket.
Okay.
And you just removed, and it happened to be 120 pounds. I remember very well.
Okay.
And then you gave me 120 pounds, you prayed for me, and I was gone. Yeah.
Okay. Now you have you went to Finland?
Yes.
So what did you study in Finland?
So in Finland I did the entrance exam, I passed, and I started business administration. So that's when I started my schooling for business administration in Finland. I stayed there for about 3.5 years. Life was a little bit challenging there. Number one, it was cultural shock. It was such a very different environment from what I'm used to. Second was language barrier. I had to learn Finnish, and if I didn't learn Finnish, then I was only left with cleaning jobs. That's the only thing that I could do to survive, which I ended up having about 4 different cleaning jobs. That's what I was doing, and going to school at the same time. Very challenging times. Yes.
And the weather?
The weather was crazy. I'd never seen anything like that. I mean, absolutely crazy. I remember I landed there in May, what they consider summer. And literally, it was like 10 degrees Celsius.
Oh, that's summer.
Yeah, and that's summer. And people are wearing T-shirts. I was wearing a jacket. So everybody knew I was new. People would ask me, hey, did you just come recently? And I'm like, why are you people asking me that? I say, because of how you're dressed. So it was very crazy. One of the reasons why I ended up leaving, as a matter of fact, 3.5 years later, I decided to look for a job in Australia. You know, that's how I transitioned now from Finland, and I went to Australia because the weather was just too harsh for me. Yeah.
So did you eventually get a job in Australia, or did you go to school in Australia?
So what I did was I went, at the time, Australia was very short of workers. So a lot of people were getting jobs. So I applied and I went there. By the time I was leaving, I didn't have a certain job, but they had invited me that I could go and apply for jobs. It was a very interesting process. You could actually travel there and then apply for jobs and change your status. When I went there, it was not what I expected because I didn't have a lot of documentation that's needed. I was there legally, but just didn't have the right documentation. And the money that I had from Finland started running out. So I become homeless because now I don't have money. And when I became homeless, and this happened for about a week, I literally went and slept at a McDonald's because the McDonald's had a very simple policy. They had a 24-hour McDonald's with a cyber cafe. Provided you ordered coffee or something, you could stay there browsing all night. And so that's what I would do. I would buy coffee and stay there and actually sleep there at McDonald's, and I had my bags packed somewhere else. And one day I just woke up and I was walking down the street, George Street, which is one of the main streets, and I see a church there. And I walk in there, and there was a meeting that was going on. And I went there and I said, look, I'm a believer, I'm a born-again Christian. I came here in search for a better life, but I'm running out of resources and I need the help from the church. So they tell me, they say, there is a gentleman that's not in this meeting, but he used to be a pastor long time ago in Nairobi Baptists. But he's actually Australian. He's lived here, but he went and served there for a long time. He said, you might need to meet and talk to him, but he's out of the country. We'll give him your number. I'd bought a little cell phone. And so 3-4 days later went by, and I get a call, and they say, this is Pastor Omar OJ. And he said, I heard that you're from Kenya originally and you're going through some challenging times. He says, I'm the president of this missionary organization. Can we meet? So I went and met him, and he said, as a matter of fact, we need help here. We have one of the largest missionary organizations in Australia. We send missionaries in over 60 different countries, and we need help here. We need someone to help us with the computers and in the library. Would love to give you a job. And so that's how I got my job there.
Wow.
Yeah, very, very miraculous. It was unbelievable. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So how long did you stay in Australia?
I stayed there for about 6 months.
Okay.
Yes, and I was working for them. At this particular time, my brother and sister are already in the United States, and they started telling me, you know, Charles, you're in Australia by yourself. Mother is coming down this way soon. We're trusting God. Dad's going to be coming here soon. Are you just going to be the only one living over there? Maybe you should give it a trial and come this way. So after 6 months of being in Australia, I started thinking to myself, maybe I need to start applying and try. And that's exactly what I did. And God, in His own miraculous way, He opened the door, and I moved to the U.S.
So now you have moved to the U.S.
Yes.
So what are you doing?
So I do a few things in the U.S., from real estate to accounting to business training. So I'm a business consultant and a business coach. Okay. And really one of the things that we do from the consultancy and the coaching side is just helping people to take ideas from zero and to be able to execute on those ideas and make them profitable businesses.
I am told becoming a coach is not very easy.
Yes.
So how did you become a coach?
Well, I think for me it has a lot to do with my life experiences and lessons. When I went there, I started working for many organizations, and at some point I just knew there's something more in me. So I decided to start a business. And when I started that business, it was actually in web design and things like that. And then I ventured into accounting, helping people prepare their taxes and things like that. And I found that there was something in this, right? And as I grew the business from one location, second location, third location, by the time I got to 6 locations, I thought to myself, maybe I should franchise this business. So I hired a company that helped me franchise the business. And there's so many details in between as I was growing the business, because there was a lot of struggles, there was a lot of mistakes that I was making, but now I had learned the lessons. So when I started franchising the business, I discovered most of my franchisees needed someone to coach them how they can grow their business, just like I did my own business. So I would travel around the country. We had locations now in 8 different states, and I would travel seeing my franchisees every time and explaining to them, this is how you should run the business. And that was my entry point to becoming a business coach, because the lessons that I was taking for granted were actually working for them. So I started getting invited to speak other places and so on, and that's how the business coaching got birth. It was from the trenches. It was real life experiences. I was not teaching them what's written in the book. I was teaching them what I'm living through. And I think that's really one of the distinguishing factors. What made me really passionate about business coaching was I wasn't just teaching them theory, I was living it. Yes.
Wow. I think that's quite a story. The concept of franchising. Can you explain to a few of us, a few Kenyans who don't have that concept? What is that really is?
So the idea of franchising it's very simple. One of the things that I believe in any given business is that you need to have a system that runs the business. Then the work of the people is to run the system. We try to make people run the business, but people cannot run the business. The system should run the business. So the idea behind franchising is to have an established system in place. Because when you have the established system in place, you can duplicate the results. It doesn't matter where. So the only thing is you just need to get people, train them on the system, and then the system is going to run the business. And I think one of the business models that has proven to work over time, I mean, think about concepts like KFC. The only reason they can have KFC in China and have it in Kenya regardless of the different cultural backgrounds, geographical location, different target markets, is because they have a system. And all they need to do is train people on the system. So for many people that have businesses, one of the best things at an early stage that you can do is take the time to develop the systems. Because once you have the systems in place, instead of experiencing linear growth, you can experience exponential growth. And this is why franchise business tend to succeed more often so than businesses that don't have established systems in place. Yes.
Wow. Well, that's quite a concept and very profitable. Are you still teaching it in the US, or were you able to move out of the US and teach in different places?
So actually I was able to move out from the US, and we teach out pretty much 25 to 30 countries every year. And this is prior to the pandemic, prior to 2019. And of course, an interesting story happens in my life in 2019. And I'm sure we will come to that.
We'll come to that.
So, but that's what we do. So we train people from Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Dubai, all over the world, really. We've been fortunate enough to be training these concepts really in over 30 countries, and we do that every year.
And it's all on tax, or what exactly?
No, it's general in business. Okay. So I moved now from just focusing on taxes because we discovered that the principles were the same. And so if you learn the principles, you could run your dentist practice more effectively. You could, run your IT company more effectively. So now it's no longer just on taxes. We teach people how to start, grow, and scale any business, how to manage the risk, how to make use of the wealth, and how you reinvest back in the business, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, how do you get into a country?
How do you get into a country?
Yeah, you have never been there. You are not known. How do you get there?
Well, that's the power of social media, Bishop. And I think social media has really changed how we do business. Actually, it's very interesting because we've been into countries where we've never been, and we've attracted anywhere in the numbers of 10 to 15,000 people. In a country where we don't have any local relationships. People are hungry for information. And if you give them the right information that's transformational, that can change their lives, they're willing to avail themselves. And I think sometimes we undermine the power of social media and what it can do. That's really how we get into countries. Of course, there's a few countries where now going back has been easier. We now have local relationships. But in many, for example, of these Asian countries, we knew nobody. Absolutely. Just social media.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. How would you rate your success?
Well, we've been fortunate. I think the journey is still long. But we've been fortunate because I think for me, I've measured success based on the success stories that have come from those countries. It's not the number of people. We've sometimes gone to a country and it was only 100 people that showed up. And those 100 people gave testimonials a year, 2 years later saying how this changed my life. We've seen people that were jobless that ended up starting a business that now is very successful and they're making a lot of money. So I think how I rate success for me has not by volume, but on the transformational stories that have been birthed out of these countries. And again, like I said, we've been fortunate because those stories are from everywhere. Yes.
You've been to several countries in Africa.
Yes.
Which are these countries?
So we've been to South Africa, Uganda, Rwanda, of course our home country here, Kenya, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Rwanda.
So Rwanda happened in 2019, but actually my first time to go to Rwanda was in 2018. We went there, we did an event, it was very successful, and then we decided in 2019, hey, let's go big. We can reach more people. We saw a lot of hunger in the youth in the country, and we said, you know what, we can impact more people. So we decided to organize a bigger event in 2019. And 2019, I was in the middle of a tour. We had just finished about 12 countries. We had finished our European tour, and now we were doing the Middle East tour, and then we came now to Africa. So Rwanda was the place we went. And to our surprise, we had a bigger turnout than than usual, which sparked the interest of the political entities in the country and the government, because they were a little bit suspicious what was going on. And so we were there, and right before we went on stage, if you don't mind me, I can just proceed and share the story. Yeah. Right before I went on stage, you know, the officials of the country, they came and they said, well, we need to talk to you because this is an unusual gathering. We have about 20,000 people. The hall is full of people. There are people waiting outside to come for session number 2. So they said, you know, we need to understand what's this all about. So they called me into a separate room, and I talked to them, and they asked me, and I explained exactly what we were doing. One of the gentlemen looks at me and say, wow, I'm so sorry. I think it was a misunderstanding, but we understand exactly what's going on. So we need to talk to you and see your passport and whatnot. So I presented all my documents, and really, in all honesty, they say, I think this is a misunderstanding. You're good to go. The hotel had cleared you. You don't need a permit. This is a business event. It's not a demonstration or anything like that. And within that period of time, one of the investigators turned around and he said, well, are you a politician? And things started getting a little bit mixed up there. They asked me, are you a politician? I said, no, I'm not a politician. They said, but we've looked at your profile and you have photos with different heads of states. So it means that you must be a politician. I said, absolutely not. I'm not a politician. But I've been fortunate to meet these people because of what I do. Now, one photo sparked a lot of interest to the people. Now, we understand in politics, we still look at politicians and sometimes from very different perspective than the ordinary mwananchi. Because a mwananchi, you know, I could be talking to this person and this person, but from politicians, they look at it from a very different perspective. And, you know, to be honest with the audience, I was with photos with the former president of Burundi, President Nkurunziza. And so that sparked a lot of interest, and they wanted to know what was going on because of the political instability of the region at the time. Of course, you know, they had their own reasons for that, none of which I know. But that turned out into becoming one thing which led them to saying, I have to go for interrogation because maybe I'm affiliated and maybe the people are gathered because I have been sent there in the country. And before I know it, they tell me, you're under arrest. You need to come and talk to us. Wow. Yes. So they arrest me, and I went and I get interrogated the whole day. About the same question. Now
the meeting is no longer going on.
Meeting is no longer going on. The people are left hanging because I had just been introduced by the MC. So now they're waiting for the speaker. Wow. Because nobody knows what's going on. But people start seeing outside there is a movement because they now brought in some military guys, police. I mean, now it become the minister is there, Minister of Justice is there, head of police is there. It's a big deal. Because now there is miscommunication, that there is someone from Burundi here who's come to disrupt the government. So the first news leak that comes out said that there was a national security threat to Rwanda by a Kenyan who's organized an event. You know, that was the first news that went out. So all the agency and all the organs now are there because there's a political instability, something is going on, national security threat. So they take me and they ask me question all day. What do you do for President Nkurunziza? Did he send you? Has he funded you? And if not, how much money do you give him? Wow. To which I had no answers to that because I knew him as an individual. Yes, I had gone there several times and we met several times, but I had no political affiliations whatsoever. And that night they just tell me, well, you know what, we're going to have to continue this. So I disappeared. And so we went on for a few days, still being interrogated. And
so they put you in?
They put me in somewhere called a safe house. So nobody knew where I was until the Kenyan embassy found out, and then the US embassy got alerted, and now I surfaced. Yes. It was a very unfortunate thing that it happened in Africa because I've lived to believe that as African we've changed, but there's still a lot of national security threats based on perceptions. It's sad that that happened. So I get interrogated. We go through the legal system, and they said, well, the only thing we can do is take you through the legal proceedings to determine if if you are guilty or not guilty. But then the story changed when we went to court. Now it was not about Nkurunziza. Now it was that, hey, you planned a seminar, and the seminar never took place.
Oh.
I said, wait a minute, but I'm not the one who stopped the seminar. So the case just kept changing every time we went. Second time we went, the story was different. You conducted an illegal meeting. We battled that in court. It was never illegal. Then lastly, they said, well, you promised you were going to give people money at the end of the seminar. And we had a thing that said we're going to give 197 bonus value if you stay till the end. And then it says there, this is not cash. This is a gift for staying till the end of the event. They said, no, you promised to give people money. That's why they showed up. So that is fraud. We're putting you in for 2 years.
Wow.
And so I just got falsely accused that way.
And you just you have been condemned for 2 years?
I was condemned for 2 years. Everyone else I was with, they were released within the fast. So we had some Rwandese that were helping us, about 17 of them. They got released after 7 days. My co-workers from here in Kenya got released after 2.5 months. And then they put me in for 2 years. And how they were able to pull off the 2 years is they kept me going back to court trying to fight it, and so they would postpone it. And and they said, well, you promised you're going to give people money, and you just can't do that here in Rwanda. It was really an unfortunate thing.
Wow.
Yes. And Bishop, what is interesting is, you talked about open talk being based on the Word of God. What's interesting is how many people are in our prison system today that did not commit any crime. Yes, I understand. There are people that are there and they did very, horrible things. But there's a lot of people, because of lack of justice and lack of a proper justice system in many African countries. And so you find the justice system is being used to oppress certain people. And I was just a victim of that. And now that reminded me about the Joseph story. Because now I go through prison and I remember that Joseph didn't do anything. But God had chosen that path for him. And it's very interesting because as the body of Christ, sometimes God will choose a certain path for you. It's unfortunate how even believers were condemning me that there's something I could have done, that's why I'm there. And we forget that, as a matter of fact, Joseph was running away from sin. He didn't want to do anything, but he finds himself in that situation. Why? Because people are interested. Everybody wants the crown of Joseph, the end story, the result, but nobody wants the process. And that's the interesting part, because everybody wants he's second in command, he's good, he's doing big things, he's saving his family. But ask all these people, do you want his process? And nobody wants the process. And so I quickly started understanding that God had a purpose for me to be there. Yes.
So how did you spend your day in prison?
Well, prison has a very unpredictable schedule. So you never know. There is nothing like my schedule. You could wake up and tell yourself, today I'm going to do this. But it's not going to happen, because maybe you'll come, you have to go and do manual labor, or you have to go do this. So the schedule was a little bit unpredictable. But one of the things that I purposed while I was in there was that I was going to study the Word of God like never before, and I was going to invest in myself. Because I discovered that they arrested me physically for a crime I did not commit, but they didn't arrest my mind. My mind was as free as it could ever be. And
I think that's a very important point for someone to hear that.
Absolutely.
You could be physically arrested or imprisoned, but your mind is not imprisoned.
Absolutely. And for those of you that are watching, by the way, if you happen to find yourself in a situation that you're in prison, it's just the four walls, but your mind has got no limitations. And I tell people all this all the time. One of the things that really helped me go through that season is, Bishop, I took holidays when I was there. I would close my eyes and go to Hawaii. I would close my eyes and, enter a private jet. I really determined, I said, I'm going to use my mind and go to the places I've never been and use my imagination, because the only thing that restricted me was the four walls. But I discovered my mind was free. Nothing was to stop me. And it's from prison that I came with some of the greatest business ideas that I'm presently implementing right now. You know, I studied over 220 books in the period of 2 years. I read the Bible back to back 4 times, memorized 480 scriptures that I can recite often. I said, I'm going to make use of this time because there's nothing else that I could do. You know, you can sit there and feel sorry for yourself, but that's not going to change the situation. You can sit there and feel angry because you're there and you're an innocent man. That's not going to change anything. What you can change is the decisions that you make. And I made a decision that I was not going to allow that situation to define me. And maybe some of the people watching, you're in prison, not necessarily in prison, but you've allowed, you know, poverty to imprison you. You've allowed your present financial situation to imprison you. You've allowed your health to imprison you. But the decisions you make are going to determine the future that you're going to create. And I discovered that first we make decisions, then our decisions make us later. So that's how I decided I'm going to make the best use of my time here. It was frustrating, it was difficult. There are days I felt down, but I didn't allow those moments to define me. Yes.
Wow. So eventually, did they ever apologize, or did they tell you your time is now over, you can go home? How did it come?
So what they did is that the prosecution kept on, so they did appeal my case. Because the first judge gave me 2 years. Then the prosecution went and said, we're asking for 3.5. So they got me wasting a lot of time trying to battle that 3.5. And then at the last minute, the judge said, you know what, I'm sticking to the 2-year decision. And so that was maybe on 16th month or 15th. So now I had only 7 months to go, roughly about that. Nobody apologized. But I wasn't looking for even their apology, Bishop. Because let me tell you, one of the things that I have learned is that God is faithful. And God will not allow. As a matter of fact, and for those of you that are watching, people that have treated you unjustly, God is the one who can only avenge for you. When I was there, God told me that anyone that was involved in my arrest or to frustrate my life, God was going to deal with them. As we are speaking right now, the director of prison that had made it his purpose to frustrate my life, he was arrested and he was given 7 years.
Wow.
The deputy got arrested. The overall commander of the prison system lost his job. God told me everyone that was involved, and all these people were involved to some capacity because I was an easy target for them. The moment I went there, you know, they started trying to torture me. They started trying to frustrate me. They started speaking lies on me on media. The guy that wrote the worst article about me, which was 100% lies, I met him in prison. He came. He got arrested for another crime. So God is the only person who can avenge for you. And so I wasn't even looking. I said, you know what? Since you cannot give me the human apology, let God deal with you. And God is faithful. Yeah. Not that I celebrate to see their downfall, but it has taught me a lesson that you have to let God be God in your life. The Bible says in Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 9 that know that the Lord your God, he is faithful. And that's what kept me going. He is faithful. So even with everything that happened, he's faithful. I don't have to try and defend myself because I did what I could as man. But I got to a point I had to allow God to be God. Yes.
You know, sometimes when someone has come out of prison,
yes,
it becomes difficult to begin.
Yes.
How did you shed off whatever was there and began anew?
One of the things is, while I was even there, I didn't allow, you know, the Bible says that the gifts of God are irrevocable, right? They're without repentance. And you will not believe this, but I kept coaching people, ministers and things like that. I was coaching them on what they need to do when they get out there to grow their businesses. So for me, it didn't begin when I got out of prison. It began while I was in prison. And so what I did is that I would sit down, conceptualize ideas, write all those business plans, and I would think, how can I implement this thing when I get out? So when I got out, it was just, I was just implementing something that I had already begun. But another thing is that I learned that really helped me is you cannot manage people's opinion about you. You can only manage who you are, which is character. Reputation, even Jesus, the Son of God, his reputation wasn't the best on earth. I mean, he was crucified.
Yeah.
But the only thing that you can do is manage your character, who you know. I know I'm not a fraudster. I did not do what they accused me of. So I didn't let that get to me. Now, there was a lot of articles that were written on both sides, good and some of them bad. One of the things that I discovered is that people allow prison to define them. So when you leave out of prison, you allow it to be a stigma in your life, and you allowing that situation to control you, but you shouldn't. You should not allow those things to define you, and when you don't let them define you, then nothing can stop you. Another thing that it was prayers and having the right people. I remember we spoke when I got out, and it's people like you and a few friends that, were eagerly waiting for me. We've been waiting for you, and we're here to stand with you. Whatever it is that you need to do, we're there with you. And surrounding yourself with the right environment when you leave such an environment is very critical. Yes.
So you do some training on wealth.
Yes.
How can you just put that in a nutshell? How is that?
So we do a lot of training on wealth, and it's based on different things. One of it is there's a lot of people that have great ideas, but they don't know how to conceptualize those ideas and implement those ideas. And then you have people that are already implementing those ideas, but they're trying to get to the next level of those ideas. And so that's where we come in as consultants and as business coaches. And our theory, or rather my training platform, is based on very simple things. Identifying where you are, identify where you're trying to go, and developing a plan on how you're going to get there. And not only wealth, because sometimes your personal life is a reflection, or rather your business is a reflection of your personal life. So how do we get your mindset right, for example, so that you can be able to handle your business? How do we get, your family affairs right, your finances? So it's all collective. It's not just about, we discovered wealth is not just about the money. Wealth is about having the ability to focus and understanding that it's a process, and developing a system in place that can help you sustain or grow that wealth. And so that's really how we teach.
Okay.
Yes.
How long that would that take?
So it depends. Some companies come to us and they have all kinds of problems. And it could be a year journey. There are people who come and they're just like, they just need 4 weeks. So everybody's situation is different. But one of the things that I'll tell people all the time is you have to constantly invest in yourself. You have to invest in yourself and be part of some coaching program going on in your life. Just like athletes. I've never seen an athlete who went to the Olympics, or even, people who went to World Cup, a soccer team, that didn't have a coach. But think about it. Even with athletes, they just don't say, all right, I need the coach for 1 month and I'm good, I can go to the Olympics. No, it's a lifetime thing. So coaching is a lifetime thing. These athletes, they invest in themselves. And that's why you'll never see a top athlete player who went to the Olympics without a coach. What makes you think, you and I think, that we can get into the Olympics of our life, into the World Cup, into the pinnacle of success in our lives without having a coach? Not possible. You have to have a coach, and it's a lifetime thing.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So, since you left Rwanda,
yes,
prison,
yes,
have you gone into coaching, or have you gone to different countries in the country yet?
Yes. So when I got out, I've already done an event in South Africa and in Dubai. And COVID changed the dynamics of events a little bit. We've been doing some events online on Zoom training. But yes, I'm back there bigger and better than ever before, because now I have a real story. And my story has actually been very, very critical in how we help people now in growing their businesses. Yes.
You know what I like, or what I'm picking, is that this prison experience did not pull you back.
No.
They kind of refired you.
Yes.
And you are out to go. Do you see yourself going back to Rwanda?
Honestly, I don't think at this very moment. But what I teach will be hard from Rwandese all over the world. Not because more so that I'm scared to go to Rwanda, but I discovered that sometimes certain people are not ready to receive you and the message that you have. But when the time comes, I'll go there.
Okay.
Yes.
And are you having any events here in Kenya soon?
Yes, there is one that we're working on for July.
Okay.
Yes. Well, one that we're working on in July, and I'm actually super excited because we missed out the last one because of what happened in Rwanda, and so we're coming back, and I'm really excited. Yes.
Do you ever tell this story when you go out there? Do you ever tell your Rwanda experience?
Yes, actually, it's been a blessing in different ways. So since I got back to the US, I've had several interviews with different media stations. Actually, I was recently approached also with a publishing company that followed my story, and I had no idea that they were. And they want to write the truth about what happened in Rwanda. So there's a book that's also coming up, and they're very, very interested in the story as well. And we've already started the process. So I share my story, and to encourage actually people that are watching this, your story is your story, and nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can steal that story from you.
Say it again.
Nobody can steal your story from you. Sometimes rock bottom becomes the step that you need to start building back up again. And that's exactly where I was. It was rock bottom. But I discovered that rock bottom is a foundation, because the lower you go, the stronger the foundation. Even when you're building physical structures, if you want a taller building, you have to go deeper. And so sometimes rock bottom in your personal life should become the strongest foundation that you can use. Your story is your story, and I'm not ashamed of that. Nowadays, I make fun about it. Hey, the other day while I was in prison, sometimes people that don't know the story, they say, "Oh, stop joking." I'm like, no, actually, I was in prison. Yeah, it has its challenges, though. Sometimes it may cost you in business, because there are people who, they don't want to be associated with people who've been in prison before. But when you go out there and you search the story for yourself, you will know that it was a story of an innocent man. But there are many people. But there are also great leaders of our time, like Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria, was in prison. I mean, a lot of great leaders. Nelson Mandela was in prison and still came out. It's not that he did anything, but he just stood for what he believed. So prison can just be a piece of the puzzle in your life. Don't let it define you. Define what you're going to do with your life. Yes.
Well, there's a viewer who would be interested in some training from you,
yes,
and getting to know what you teach and train. How would they get in touch with you? What would you say to them so that they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So if you'd like to find us, website is www.wealthfitnessonline.com. wealthfitnessonline.com. And if you go to that link, there's all kinds of programs. We have programs for individuals. We have programs for different organizations. We have programs even for startups. People who are just saying, you know what, I've never had a coach, but I want to get started. And not only will you come into a family, but we have students from all over the world. You get to meet new people and things like that. And great things usually come out from our students, because some of them end up doing deals together and getting to meet and doing things together. So it's wonderful. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you so very much. It's so nice to have you and to see you back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We prayed for you.
I know you did.
We did everything we could. But the process you had to go through the whole process.
The whole process.
Again, that's something that you need to also mention to the people. And then once the process starts, you cannot sabotage the process.
Yes.
You've got to go through the whole process. So those of you who could be going through a process, keep holding. You keep holding. It may appear as if this is the end of the road, but keep holding. A lot of people give up. A lot of people give up when they are just about to go through a process. When they are just about to finish the process. Don't give up. Thank you so much. Thank you, Charles, for coming and sharing your story. This is Open Talk.
Yes.
And in Open Talk, you talk or I talk. we hear one another. And I'm sure our viewers have benefited a lot from your discussion, and I'm looking forward to having you again.
Thank you so much.
Open Talk. For our viewers, may the Lord richly bless you. This is your pastor and your friend for a long time, Bishop Kariuki, coming to you through Open Talk. You talk, I talk. We hear one another and we move on. God bless you. We'll see you next Wednesday by God's grace. Ciao, ciao.